Tonight on EWTN Live, we'll talk about what it means to fully integrate our faith into our daily lives, and we'll discuss some of the worthwhile battles that we encounter as we figure out the purpose of living according to the gospel. So please stay with us. Thank you very much. I'm Father Mitch, and welcome to EWTN Live, which is our chance to bring you guests from all over the world. Before we get to tonight's guest, I want to mention that today is the feast of Saint Josaphat Kontsevich. He was born, I believe it's now the Ukraine, and he became an archbishop. And he had two very important dynamics in his ministry. On one hand, he was very committed to the union with the universal church, and that he was very much a Catholic and wanted the Christians of the East to be in union with the whole church, including with the Pope. But on the other hand, he also wanted to make sure that he protected the rights of the Eastern Church, that the goal was not to have them become just like the Latin Christians, but rather to be in union with the Latin Christians, so that the distinctive identity of the Greek Catholic Church in Eastern Europe would be part, as Pope St. John Paul used to say, be that other lung with which the church is breathing. St. Josaphat died as a martyr in 1623 for the unification of the church. And we pray for the Christians in the East, still suffering in the Ukraine, very much as the Russians are trying to invade. And we have to remember, during the communist times, it was the Eastern Orthodox and the Eastern Rite Catholics who bore the brunt of atheist persecution of the church. And we give our thanks for all the martyrs, but especially today, St. Josaphat. Now, tonight we have a guest who has been trying to help college students more fully integrate their Catholic faith into their everyday lives. And given that he works just 3 miles away from the nation's capital, where national policy decisions like Roe versus Wade are made at the Supreme Court, and the HHS mandate are made into decisions over at the Health and Human Services Office. He's got a very interesting job. He's also a lawyer, so he knows what those other folks are up to. And he's here to talk about that and the role of Catholic education at the university level. So please welcome the president of the Catholic University of America, Mr. John Garvey.
Thank you, Father.
Good to have you.
Very nice to be here.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for coming all the way from Washington.
It's a delightful opportunity for me.
Good. Now, how long have you been at Catholic University as the president?
5 years.
5 years. And before that, you were a dean.
I was for 11 years the dean of the law school at Boston College.
So, this is not your first move into university administration.
No, I've been an academic for many years, but for about 15 years I've been trying to run things.
And you taught law?
I have taught law at Kentucky and at Notre Dame before I was at Boston College.
Great, great. Now, this is a very important area because this coming year, we're celebrating, 25 years since Pope St. John Paul published Ex Corde Ecclesiae?
Yes, next year will be the 25th anniversary of Ex Corde Ecclesiae.
Just so folks know what that refers to, What is that document about?
It was an encyclical about the role and the proper structure of Catholic higher education, not just in the United States, but around the world.
Mm-hmm. And so it would have had a certain amount of ambiguity to it, because Catholic universities in various countries have varying levels of freedom.
They do, and they're structured differently. I've visited many Catholic universities around the world. I was in Korea this fall. I've been in Chile and Argentina and Mexico, in Western Europe, and American Catholic universities are structured differently. For example, they're residential universities, whereas the Catholic University in Milan is not. The students will live in the city near the campus. So we have campus ministries that have a whole set of concerns that other schools don't.
Yeah, and it is more of a phenomenon at American universities to have large areas for dormitories.
Yeah.
And sometimes, in some places, tens of thousands of students living in dormitories.
That's true.
And you don't have that many at Catholic.
No, we don't. The really big universities in America of that size, 40, 50,000 students, tend to be public universities.
Right.
But Catholic universities may have as many as 15,000 students, graduate and undergraduate.
Sure. And, so that's one difference. What were some of the other areas that you saw as distinctive about American Catholic universities?
A second difference is America is a first world country, so its universities, including its Catholic universities, are often much richer than they are in other parts of the world. And they have academic ambitions and are part of a culture that's very different from the cultures in the rest of the world, and that affects the university life.
In what way?
Well, in some ways universities set the tone for the culture. In other ways they reflect what the culture is doing. So in American culture, there's a tendency in recent years to become increasingly secular in its ambitions. This is reflected in the art and music and literature that we see. American science is the envy of much of the world, and so there's an emphasis on scientific inquiry and engineering schools that are, again, attractive to people from foreign shores.
Yeah. And in terms of a place like Catholic University, this was founded not by any one of the religious orders. Most of the other Catholic universities were founded by a wide variety of different religious orders of men and of women, but not Catholic University.
No, we're distinct in that respect. Most of the American Catholic universities, as you say, were founded by the Jesuits, your own order, by Franciscans, Dominicans, and also by Ursulines and many orders of nuns. The Catholic University of America was the gift of the Baltimore councils in the 19th century. Do you know how when you and I were young, we studied the Baltimore Catechism as part of our education? Well, and we attended, many of us, parochial schools. The second and third Baltimore councils in the 19th century undertook to create a Catholic school system, a Baltimore Catechism. It's called Baltimore because that's where the councils met. And they also resolved at the second and undertook at the third Baltimore Council to create the Catholic University of America, which was a unique institution created with the approval of Pope Leo XIII. So we are the national university of the Catholic Church.
And there were already quite a number of colleges around the country.
There were small colleges,
right,
including a number of Catholic colleges. We were distinct in that regard also. In the 19th century, this wasn't true just of Catholic schools, but Harvard University was a college. It didn't provide graduate education in the way that the Catholic University of Louvain or the German research universities did. We were begun in 1887, and about 10 years before, Johns Hopkins University was begun as the first research university in the United States for graduate students. And Catholic University was begun as a graduate institution of higher education, mostly for the further doctoral education of priests and religious who had their seminary training elsewhere.
Yeah, a lot of folks don't realize that point, that very few universities gave the PhDs until the 1870s. Just didn't happen. My own alma mater, Vanderbilt, was the 5th university to give the PhD, and it is something fairly new for this rather frontier country. But things were settling down, and the Catholics were very much early involved with Catholic U, was starting that kind of higher education.
I think that's well put. And in the first half of the 20th century, the American Catholic intellectual life was unprepossessing in a lot of quarters, and the Catholic University of America stood out among them in that respect. We educated many of the presidents of other Catholic universities.
Right, right. It was, a big thrust, and again, it's something for folks to think back on. A big thrust of the colleges and universities started by the orders, which were typically inside cities, oriented towards the grandchildren of immigrants. Immigrants came with nothing. They got their children started, and their grandchildren would be perhaps the first to go to college, and they wanted professional degrees.
Right.
Doctors, lawyers, teachers, social workers, all kinds of professions. A lot of nursing schools, dental schools, medical schools. These were the kind of things. But pure academic research was not quite as strong.
It was a more unusual thing. Whereas at the Catholic University of America, from early days, we had a Department of Semitic and Egyptian languages and advanced degrees in Greek and Latin in theology, philosophy, canon law, as well as law and arts and sciences.
Now, one of the things about the universities in general, not just the Catholic universities, but the secular universities, are not only secular, but often take a fairly anti-religious tone. Not necessarily as policy, but students report to me constantly from around the country that teachers have an anti-religious tone, if not sometimes, punitive action for people who are religious by giving them poor grades and such if they express religious thoughts. This is not the case at Catholic University.
No, it isn't the case at Catholic University. It's I think one of the great things about the sort of education we provide is that it's an opportunity for the Catholic intellectual tradition to be developed and handed on to our students. It's I think the greatest gift we have to offer to American culture.
And you have a very high percentage of faculty that are Catholic.
Yes, we do. As you might expect, the name of the university clues people into this fact. But when we hire faculty to teach in all of our schools, one of the questions that's part of the hiring process is, what do they understand about the mission of the Catholic University of America, and what sort of contribution would they expect to make to it? So people come with their eyes open.
Sure, sure. And there's a high percentage also of students, not all the students, but the big majority of your students are Catholics.
Yeah, I think probably 90 to 95% of the undergraduates are Catholic. And among graduate students, because we have graduate studies in engineering, the sciences, nursing, music, architecture, law, and as well as the arts and sciences and the ecclesiastical schools, people come from all around the world to get graduate degrees. But about 60 to 65% of our graduate students are probably Catholic.
Now, given that background, one of the things that you have been overseeing is a change. There was a certain trend on college campuses to have co-ed dormitories. And this is something that's been changing at your university, correct?
Well, I think it's fair to say that it has changed at our after I was at Catholic for a year. In fact, when I arrived at Catholic University, let me begin by saying that I'm the father of 5 children and the grandfather of 16 children, and my wife and I have given our children 94 years of Catholic education, but we're in many respects a normal family. Our children grew up as normal children, got in the same kind of mischief as children do, had the same sorts of developmental issues as all children. So we know what college kids are like. And one of the first things that I did when I came to Catholic was to say to our vice president for student life, we're going to go back to single-sex residence halls. You figure out how to make it happen, but I want to do it.
Was there much pushback on that?
You know, it was surprisingly easy. We announced the decision. I wrote an article for the Wall Street Journal at the end of my first year when we began to roll out the program, saying that we were going back to single-sex residence halls and explaining why we were doing it. I said that we were going to do it over a period of 3 years so that the students who were already there could live in the co-ed residence halls that were there when they arrived. But after 3 years, anybody who came in would have come in with the expectation that they were going to live in single-sex residence halls. So now we're to the point where the transition is complete. So there wasn't so much pushback because it didn't really affect anybody who didn't choose it coming in.
Right.
There was a great sort of cultural uproar. One of our daughters, who was at the time an investment banker in London, said that this piece in the Wall Street Journal was the most frequently read piece in the journal in Western Europe that week. So,
Is that right?
yeah, a lot of people thought, to my surprise, that this was an extraordinary thing to do.
Why?
Why did
Why did they think it was
that
extraordinary?
Because it's so countercultural. More than 90% of the residence halls in America at other universities are co-ed, and this was going in the opposite direction.
Yeah, it's doesn't seem to be so wise to have co-ed dorms. You know, there's room to maintain a certain mystery about each of the gender, and let them sort of be in their world and we'll be in our world, and focus on studies rather than some of the dramatic dynamics that go on as, oh, he's mad at her and she's mad at him and so on. A lot of that seems to be reduced a bit.
It does. One of the interesting things that we found out in the course of studying the issue was that the rates of binge drinking are much higher among students who live in co-ed dorms than they are among students who live in single-sex dorms. And as you might expect, the rate of hooking up, as young people call it, is considerably higher in co-ed dorms. We thought it was important to do this not in the first place just in order to send a message to the students about what sort of respect young men and young women should show one another when they're going to bed at night or bathing or getting up in the morning. It was it's just a sort of lesson that young people learned at home and should take with them into their college careers.
Now, besides setting another tone that's going against the general trend at universities around the country, what is it that helps a Catholic sense? Because a lot of people send their young people, their children, to get a Catholic education in order to become more Catholic as a result. And I've heard a few parents complain that that's not always the result. What is it that helps a place to encourage Catholic identity in the way the university develops without losing solid academic quality at the same time?
That's a really good question, Father. It's and it isn't just any one thing. It's part of it is what we do in the classrooms. We don't just provide the kind of education that other universities will provide. It's important for us to, as I said earlier, to pay attention to the Catholic intellectual tradition in what we teach in classes about literature or art or music, and not just in the ecclesiastical schools in philosophy and theology and canon law. So part of it is our attention to this in what we teach the students. I teach, for example, a class to freshmen in the honors program on the virtues. And the structure of the class is the Cardinal and the theological virtues. But we read a lot of literature and watch film and movies and make visits to the National Gallery to study that subject. So one thing is the intellectual life. But the other thing about a Catholic university is that we consider it part of our responsibility to concern ourselves with the kind of people our students become in the 4 years that they're attending college. Young people grow up a lot between the ages of 18 and 22, and it has everything to do with who their friends are and what their residence life experience is like, what student organizations do, what campus ministry does, what the athletics teams communicate to them, what the campus itself has to show them. Not just the faculty, but also the staff in every part of what the university does.
Very much so. And this is something at the same time. One of the concerns I have from what I'm hearing from the state schools in particular, that the politically correct is squashing a lot of conversation. In that, in some ways, there was, when you read debates from the medieval universities, there was more academic freedom there. You could bring up any topic, but you had to defend it. And now I hear a lot of students, from students themselves and in news reports, that there's a lot of squashing of some thoughts just cannot be uttered. It's like a character out of Harry Potter. That's the name not to be said. God, for instance, etc. How do you see that developing at Catholic U? Is there that squashing of thought, or is there an engagement of thought?
It's ironic. There is a kind of cultural trope that suggests that there's an inconsistency between Catholic higher education and academic freedom. In point of fact, I think it runs the other way. I think at Catholic universities, there isn't a rule that you can't talk about God or faith or those kinds of subjects alongside whatever you're doing in your academic studies. So in that sense, there's more academic freedom rather than less at a university.
That seems, my impression, in that under the umbrella of the term political correctness, there is just a squashing of discussion and debate and learning how to think through the issues with good rational development of thought. That concerns me greatly. And I'm glad to hear that Catholic U, you got it. As a matter of fact, speaking of debate, you recently had Cardinal Kasper and Cardinal Mueller on your campus. How is that going?
Well, it caused kind of a stir because there is the story about the synod that the church recently held in Rome, right, to look at issues of marriage and family and the effects that the culture have had on those institutions, caused attracted a lot of attention in the mainstream media. I'm not sure that the media accounts we heard of the synod captured the full range of subjects that the bishops dealt with.
No,
and it's important, I think, to emphasize that this is going to be a year-long process. That the synod, which opened this fall, is going to be that the church is going to be discussing these issues and come to another conclusion next fall. Anyway, there was a range of issues expressed by various bishops, from Cardinal Burke on Cardinal Mueller on one side to Cardinal Kasper on the other side, and we had both Cardinal Mueller and Cardinal Kasper come and speak within the space of the same week at Catholic University about what was going on. And we're going to be having further reports. Archbishop Kurtz, who's the head of the Bishops' Conference, yes, has agreed to come and talk about what the synod has been thinking about.
Yeah,
so I think it was a healthy debate for our students. It's a good example of what you said, that they're about the freedom to talk about all sides of these issues.
And again, it's important that the university ought to be the place where the media doesn't hijack the conversation by taking phrases out of context, usually for a pretext of error, and instead let the actual discussion. This was Newman's whole point of a university. Bring on the debate, but be prepared and know what you're talking about.
I think
that's what the university is
I
for.
think you're right. The really important difference between what a university does and what the media do is that the media compress things so much that they've got to fit into bites of a minute or two on the evening news or a column inch or two on the USA Today, whereas the university can talk about it at great length. That's what they do for a living.
That's part of it.
Part of
But
it.
it's also their editing process with an ideology at stake. I'll give you an example. I was on one news medium to talk about something the Pope said. And they started off, in the pre-interview saying, well, don't you see how this is going against everything that Pope Benedict said? And I said, ma'am, did you read Pope Francis' statement? I'll call you back in an hour. It didn't occur to her to even read the actual statement before engaging. That is much more my experience of being in various news media. So there's also an agenda.
A greater
at
range
stake.
of opinion at universities, and that's a good thing.
And dealing with facts. We teach our students how to do footnotes correctly.
Right.
And so this is, something that I think is important because, as we started earlier, a lot of parents are concerned that their children come back from Catholic University not more enthusiastic in practicing their faith, but less so. And that doesn't sound like the kind of environment that you have at Catholic U.
I think we've failed at our job if that happens with our students. I think any parent is going to want his or her son or daughter to graduate from college loving the church more than they did when they began, and receiving the sacraments regularly, and to learn what their vocation in life might be, and to follow that in the direction God wants to take them. Those are all things that ought to happen in that period when they're in college.
With the addition that you're not just indoctrinating like they do at some of the politically correct government schools, but you are engaging thought so that they're not only practicing their faith, but they think through the issues, as you mentioned, in the arts, in the literature, in philosophy and theology and science, in all the different areas, so that they've grown up in their faith, and it stays at their same level of development of mind at the university. That's one of the things.
It's essential to emphasize that this is a university where they're growing up. It isn't an indoctrination, and nor is it a playground. It's a place where they become fully formed and intelligent and well-educated adults.
Or as I like to say, it's not a place for parents to pay for the kids to run away from home to a very safe place.
Right.
We're going to take a break, and we'll come back in a couple minutes. We want to get your questions and your comments, as well as those of our studio audience, so please stay with us. you. Thank you very much, and welcome back. First, I want to invite you to come here and join us, to be part of our studio audiences, and join us also in prayer by making a pilgrimage here, either as a group, like some of these folks have done from Indiana, or as families and individuals. If you can do so, please contact our pilgrimage department at 205-271-2966. Or you can go to our website, EWTN.com, and they will give you information about the scheduled masses, programs, tours of the studios, directions up to Huntsville to go see the sisters, places to stay, and good places to eat. We've got, again, I always like to bring up our religiously themed restaurants around here. We have Hamburger Heaven. And we've got barbecue that is golden rule. As well as this is the home of the fried green tomatoes from that movie. Right. That was written just down the road from us. So come on down and join us right here in Irondale, Alabama. Are you ready for some questions?
Yes, I am.
Well, let's giddy up. We'll start off with a caller. Hello, Carol.
Hi, Father Mitch.
Hi, where are you from?
I'm from the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. We got 3 feet of snow. We're close enough. So.
God bless you. Boy, oh boy, that's a lot of snow so early.
You betcha. You betcha.
And your question?
Okay, my question is this. What do we do as Catholic Christians when we attend a Catholic university? And I will give you the example, if I might. I went to a lecture a couple of weeks ago. They had a Native American pipe smoking prayer. They had a woman at the college speaking about meditation, but there was not one word of Christ or Christianity, and not, of course, not even Catholicism. What do we as Catholic Christians do in this situation? Thank you so much.
All right, thank you, Carol. So, she's talking about her own experience here, going to a Catholic campus and hearing nothing of Christ or Catholic faith. Would you respond in that?
I would. Carol, thank you for the question. I think when that sort of thing happens, the university is falling down on its job. And the proper way to deal with that sort of deficiency is not to ban other forms of prayer from the campus, but as a Catholic university, we have the responsibility to provide, to make it easy for our students to pray, attend the sacraments, learn about their own faith. So if that's not happening, it's because the university is not running the right sort of programs or providing the right sort of academic and religious atmosphere.
No, and it would
May I give an example from our own Catholic university?
That's why you're here.
There was a minor controversy 3 or 4 years ago, soon after I got there, maybe after I'd been at the university for a year. There was a story in the Washington Post about that talked about how at Catholic University the number of Muslim students had doubled in a short period of time, and this was curious to the Washington Post. So the reporter came out and interviewed the students to ask them, why is this? I mean, you're Muslims. Why are you attracted to a Catholic university? And the students said, we really love it here. We're not weird if we observe our faith. These are pretty observant or fairly Orthodox students. The women said, we cover our heads. There are a lot of nuns here who cover their heads. We fast during Ramadan. They fast during Lent. We say prayers 5 times a day. Many people here go to Mass every day. So we don't stand out. It's a sort of devotion that we feel comfortable with in this environment. So the reason, and the reporter said, well, where do you pray? And they said, well, yeah, we're Muslims. We can pray anywhere. Father Jude said we could use the chapel if we want, if there weren't other things going on. So my point is that this is a place where Muslims felt free to practice, not just free to practice their faith, but even comfortable in the environment, because it was a thoroughly Catholic and Christian environment where people prayed and observed their faith and welcomed others who did the same thing. But the essential, the ground for all of this was that the Catholic faith was observed throughout the campus.
And see, it's one of the things that would strike me as interesting about that is they are not treated as museum pieces to be observed. Oh, isn't that quaint? They do Muslim prayers. No, we pray. We're Catholics. We're praying here. They're praying. Just get about it, you know. And it's not treating them as if they're just something. Oh, that's so interesting. No, you just pray and then get back to the university work. And
it promotes real interreligious understanding and dialogue, not by reducing faith to a lowest common denominator and pretending as though there aren't differences among us. There are real differences among us, but we're able to treat faith as something that is essentially important to the Catholics, and people like that can understand why it's essentially important to the Muslim students, and they can talk about that.
And at the same time, they are not requiring the Catholics to pretend that they're not Catholic, or to, go back on your Catholicism or something. No, you're being Catholic. Do it. I see this in some of the Catholic schools in the Middle East, that a lot of Muslims will come to the Catholic schools because they're the best, and they say their prayers, but they know that the Catholics are going to say Mass and pray the Rosary, and this is just life. And they go on with it.
They don't just tolerate or appreciate it. I think they welcome the environment, because unlike a secular environment where prayer and head covering, fasting, and other religious observances are way outside the norm, at Catholic University, it's a very natural sort of religious observance.
Sure. Ma'am, where are you from?
I'm from San Pierre, Indiana.
Good to have you here. And what is your comment?
Well, my comment was I commend you and your university for having segregated dorms.
Thank you, ma'am.
And by that you mean segregated between boys and girls?
Right.
Yes.
Separate dorms.
Right. Why do you, now, are you a mom?
Yes, I'm a mother, a grandmother, and a great-grandmother.
Well, you're just getting it done here now. In terms of, why do you think that's such a value, to have the separate dorms?
Well, because didn't God say that, well, I don't know how to put it, but...
Put it plainly like you know it.
Well, I guess I don't think people should be thrown together in the same dorm when they're not married.
Right. That's
more occasion for sin is what I.
That was my thinking exactly, ma'am.
Yeah.
And you're in the same position of being a dad.
I'm in the same position of being a father and a grandfather, and like you, I felt that was a really wise thing. I think one of the most serious issues we have in America today concerns marriage. It isn't so much divorce as the fact that young people just aren't getting married. They live together as though they're married, and then they diverge. They may have children, they may not. But I think marriage is an institution that is not nearly as meaningful as it once was, and I think this is connected to the fact that people have pulled apart what were once all part of one contract, a lifetime commitment and sexual relations and children within marriage. And these are now separate things. People tend to put the cart before the horse. And
they do.
I just think it's important that we communicate to our students the importance of respect for the people who may be your spouse.
Among my dad's various jobs, he was a used car salesman. He didn't mind people taking a car for a test run, but it didn't last a year or two.
Right.
He wanted to get the commitment before that.
Right.
We'll give another call. Hello, Carlos?
Yes.
Hi, where are you from?
I am from New York City.
Good to have you. And what is your question?
My question, I have two really. One is on comparative religion, and the other one is critical studies of the Catholic hierarchy. On comparative religion, I would like to ask the President, what do you have on comparative religion, and is there a proscription on methodologies for the study of comparative religion at the Catholic University? And my second question is the problem of critical studies of the Catholic hierarchy in the United States, or comparative studies, like the difference between the U.S. and Latin American clergy and their different epistemologies.
All right. Let's, the second one is kind of technical, but let's take a look. What do they do, first of all, in terms of comparative religious studies?
So at Catholic University, we have 12 schools, as they're called. There's a School of Arts and Sciences, a School of Architecture, a School of Music, and we have 3 ecclesiastical schools. These are schools that have pontifical status. They're graduates.
Pontifical status means?
Means that the graduates, first of all, that the faculty in these schools have not just a mandate from the local bishop, but permission to teach in those schools from the Vatican.
So basically they work for the Pope.
In a sense they do, yeah. And the graduates of those schools have degrees that enable them to teach in seminaries.
Right.
So we have a School of Canon Law, the only one in the United States. Our School of Philosophy is an ecclesiastical faculty. And we also have a School of Theology and Religious Studies. So the School of Theology and Religious Studies teaches not just Scripture and other courses of Catholic study, but also comparative religions. So that's one of the charges of the School of Theology and Religious Studies too.
And then his second question: would there be a program that does comparative studies between, say, the way the church is structured here in the United States and the church being structured in Latin America?
Well, this is a subject that might be taken up both in the School of Canon Law and in the School of Theology and Religious Studies. The structures that the church uses to organize itself are things that are actually governed by canon law. Right. The relation between and among dioceses, between dioceses and the parishes that are part of it, between dioceses and bishops and religious orders, and the relations among the bishops themselves. These are all governed by church law as well as by theological principles. So that's a subject that might be studied in one or another of 2 schools. And as for the differences that might exist between those structures in various parts of the world, I'm not sure who might take it up from time to time.
That's why I missed the technical question that really would be perhaps, Carlos, a little more appropriate for the theology faculty in terms of the real inner workings of that department.
Right.
Ma'am, where are you from?
I'm from Colorado Springs, Colorado.
That's where I started grammar school.
All right.
Back in 1955. And my dad worked at the dog track over there.
Okay.
And your question?
My question was, what opportunities are there at the university as far as like campus ministry and ways to get involved in your faith?
That's a wonderful question, and I could talk all night about the answer to that question. Let me give just a couple of examples. One is the campus ministry. Because we're the National University of the Catholic Church, we have an institutional relationship with the Catholic bishops that no other university has.
Right.
On the other hand, we don't have the great grace of a bunch of Jesuits inhabiting our campus who run campus ministry. So we have invited the conventual Franciscans. My predecessor, Bishop O'Connell, invited the conventual Franciscans to run campus ministry. So we have a campus ministry office. Among the things that it does is to take on a number of students who act as resident ministers. So in every residence hall on the campus, in addition to the people who work for Student Life, there are in each of the residence halls students, usually in their upper years of their education, let's say juniors or seniors, who live in the halls as resident ministers, and it's their job to evangelize their fellow students. So one possibility that some of the best of our students do is to
somewhat like the
Focus does on
exactly.
Many Catholic and public school campuses. Yes, that's just built into the structure of campus ministry. We have campus ministry runs any number of events and mission trips all around the world on spring break in the summertime. So that's an opportunity for students to get involved in their faith. They run retreats on the campus. They run opportunities for students to work feeding the homeless downtown, or to work with the Little Sisters of the Poor who live right across the street from us. Right. Here's one more example. There are any number of faculty who provide these kinds of opportunities for the students. On Monday of this past week, my wife and I had a dinner at our house for young women who were considering vocations to the religious life. So we had about 25 of our students, freshmen, sophomores, juniors, a couple of seniors, who were discerning religious vocations, just to talk to us about what they were thinking, and for us to hear from them about what we could do to promote their vocation.
That's a nice size number.
It's a great number. I was really delighted. We were both immensely pleased.
All right. I have another caller in. Hello, James.
Hello.
Hi, where are you from?
Erie, Pennsylvania.
Good to have you. And what is your question?
Well, my understanding, Catholic institutions should not give awards to people that, don't uphold Catholic principles. So why is Catholic University giving an award to Cardinal Kasper when he's promoting something that's, against church teaching?
Was Cardinal Kasper getting an award?
There is a Plastun award that's given every year. That's right. You know him. He's a
great scholar.
James, let me first say that my mother went to college in Erie, Pennsylvania, and I spent a year of my life at what used to be the minor seminary for the Erie Diocese, St. Mark's Seminary, up on Grandview Boulevard. So it's nice to hear somebody from that part of the world. We did give Cardinal Kasper an award. And let me say that I don't know that anything that Cardinal Kasper has been teaching is contrary to the faith. He certainly represents a point of view that's at issue in the debates in the Synod, but I think it's important to recognize that the Holy Father invited him to kick off the Synod with the remarks that he made. So and
when the Holy Father did that, he said at the end of the Synod that he wants to have the issues on top of the table.
Right.
He doesn't want currents going underneath and all through. He wants to have an honest, open discussion and let the issues be placed there so that we can have a good discussion at the next Synod. So that was one of the issues that the Holy Father had. It's not that he agreed with the position, but he wants the discussion to take place.
I think he wanted the discussion to take place. And the other important thing to emphasize is that all of the bishops said, look, we're not settling anything at this Synod. We're opening these questions for discussion, and we're going to talk about them in the course of the next year and reconvene next fall to come to some conclusions. So I think we need to remember, too, the preliminary nature of all of the observations that are being made by people like Cardinal Kasper.
James' question still is to the point. Why would you give Cardinal Kasper the Johannes Plastun Award?
Well, he's been a distinguished scholar for many years, and I think an ornament to the Catholic Church. Some of the views that he expressed, I think, are views that I don't agree with either, but there's a difference between expressing a view of that sort and expressing a view that, for example, abortion ought to be a constitutional right, and that it's fine that we've killed 50 million unborn children.
Yeah, right. And he's not saying anything like that. But it's it's not just, you're not giving the award for his interventions at the Synod, but for his lifelong work. For his
lifelong work, yeah.
Father, where are you from?
I'm pastor of St. Cyril Methodius Parish in North Judson, Indiana, and pastor at Saint Pierre at All Saints. And people ask me, I have had many parents say, Father, can you recommend a Catholic school for my kids? And that question implies to me that they even discern that not all universities, colleges, whatever, that are termed Catholic are truly, it's Catholic light or something else, okay? And I thought that St. John Paul II, in the encyclical you mentioned, and also in the request for the mandatum, was trying to at least have some uniformity among all Catholic universities and colleges so that a parent can say that, yeah, they're truly Catholic, and I don't have to worry. But it doesn't seem that's the case. And oftentimes they use the argument of academic freedom against the mandatum.
Yeah.
I'd like to have your...
Sure. So,
let me re-describe what Father was talking about. We began our conversation with a discussion about the Apostolic Constitution Ex Corde Ecclesiae, an encyclical that Pope John Paul, St. John Paul, wrote in 1990. It talked about the nature of a Catholic university and some of the features that you should expect to find at a Catholic university. Let me mention just two of them. One that was unusually controversial at the time was a requirement, which you'll also find in canon law, that people who teach Catholic doctrine, Catholic theology, should have a mandate from the bishop to teach what they're teaching. At many Catholic schools of theology, professors of theology resisted asking the bishop for this sort of mandate. This isn't true at Catholic University. At our university, new members of the School of Theology, the School of Philosophy, the School of Canon Law, and the president begin their careers by getting a mandate from the Cardinal Archbishop of Washington. The second point, which has received less attention, but which is, I think, the single most important sentence in Ex Corde Ecclesiae, is that a distinguishing feature of a Catholic university is that a majority of the faculty will be made up of Catholics committed to the witness of the faith. I think if parents are interested in finding out whether a Catholic college or university that they're considering for their son or daughter is a place where they should send their children, they should ask that question of the school. Is it the case that a majority of your faculty are Catholics committed to the witness of the faith?
Yeah, I think that that's going to be, very key, to have that sense, and again, there still can be lively debate, because the faith does require a certain amount of engagement of how does this fit into history and philosophy and all the areas. So there's lively debate that goes on, but you're still committed to the faith and to helping people come closer to Christ. And that's something that is a very important component.
That's why we attend the universities. It's always important to say that this does not mean that non-Catholics are not welcome and full citizens at a Catholic university. It is to say, though, that a majority of the faculty, the prevailing opinion or the prevailing set of interests should be those that embrace the Catholic faith.
Sure, that'd be cool. Well, I want to thank you for being with us and giving us some more background into Catholic University and how its Catholic identity and morals are moving forward. I think that's important for our folks to have a good understanding of, and maybe to come to your campus, because also on your campus is the National Shrine of the Immaculate Conception. And so I'm sure it's not, you don't own the land, but
we do own the land.
You do? Well,
we do own the land, but the shrine is a separate institution, but we like to think of it as the most beautiful college campus church in America.
Yeah, so come for that. And I want to give you all a blessing. Almighty God bless you and keep you, cause His face to shine upon you and lead you into His wisdom. The Father, Son, the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Amen.
You know, we can bring you Mr. Garvey and so many other guests who bring a variety of different aspects of our Catholic life only because of you. You make this network possible. So please keep us in between your gas bill, electric bill, and cable bill, and we'll pay our bills too. Thank you.